One joke, one message, and everything changed. Before we jump into the story, make sure you subscribe and become part of our YouTube family. Don't forget to like the video and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. All right, let's get started. It was never meant to mean anything. That's the part I keep going back to. The moment itself was small, almost forgettable. One of those conversations that fills space, when neither person knows what to say next. We were sitting on the curb outside a convenience store, sharing a cheap drink, watching people pass by like we weren't part of the same world. That's how it always felt with her. Not distant, just separate. Like we existed in the same place, but carried different kinds of weight. She was quieter than usual that night. Not silent. She never completely shut down. But there was something in the way she stared ahead, like she was already halfway gone. "You okay?" I asked. It wasn't a deep question, just something you say, but I meant it more than I expected. She shrugged, still looking forward. "Yeah, just tired." I nodded, but I didn't look away, because I knew that kind of answer. It wasn't about sleep. It was about everything else. "How tired?" I asked. She let out a small breath, almost like a laugh, but without the humor. "The kind where you don't really want to go back," she said. That made me pause. "Back where?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. And when she did, her voice was quieter. "Anywhere," she said. That word sat heavier than it should have. Anywhere. Not a place. Not a situation. Everything. I leaned back slightly, looking at the ground for a moment before speaking again. "What happened?" I asked. She shook her head. "Nothing new, just the same stuff." That was the thing about people who go through too much. They stop explaining, because explaining takes energy, and they've already spent too much of it. We sat in silence after that. Not awkward. Just full, like there was more being said in what we didn't say. And then without thinking, without planning, without understanding why, I said it. "You could just move in with me." The second the words left my mouth, I felt it. That shift. That moment where something casual suddenly isn't. I laughed lightly, trying to pull it back. "I mean, if you're running out of options," I added quickly. "I've got space. You won't even have to listen to good advice, just bad jokes." She didn't laugh. That's what caught me off guard. She turned her head and looked at me. Not like before. Not distracted. Not tired. Focused. "Are you serious?" she asked. I hesitated for half a second. Just enough to feel it. Then I shook my head slightly. "I mean, I was joking," I said. The words felt lighter than they should have, like I was trying to convince both of us. She held my gaze for a moment longer, then nodded once. "Oh," she said. And just like that, it was over. Or at least it looked like it was. We moved on, talked about random things, finished the drink, went our separate ways. Same as always. No big moment, no dramatic shift. Just another night that blended into all the others. But something stayed with me. Not the words. The look she gave me when I said them. The way she didn't laugh. The way she actually considered it. That part didn't leave. I went home that night like usual. Same routine. Same quiet apartment. Same empty space that I had gotten used to over time. I liked it that way. Or at least I told myself I did. No noise. No interruptions. No one depending on me. It made life easier. Predictable. Controlled. I dropped my keys on the table and sat down, staring at nothing for a while. The silence felt heavier than usual. Not uncomfortable. Just noticeable. Like something was missing that I hadn't realized before. I shook it off and went to bed. But sleep didn't come easily. Not because I was thinking about anything specific, just because my mind wouldn't settle. Every time I closed my eyes, that moment replayed. "You could just move in with me." Her expression. The pause. The question. "Are you serious?" And my answer. "I was joking." Why did I say that? That's what kept coming back. Not the joke. The part where I took it back, like I needed to make sure it didn't mean anything. Like I wasn't allowed to mean it. I turned over, staring at the wall. Maybe it was better that way. Keeping things simple. not getting involved, not complicating something that didn't need to be complicated. That's how I had always lived. And it worked. Until now. The next morning, I woke up later than usual. The room was quiet. Still. Exactly how I left it. I grabbed my phone without thinking, scrolling through notifications I didn't care about. Then I saw her name. One message, sent hours ago. I opened it. Is your offer still good? I stared at the screen. For a second, it didn't register. Then it did. And everything shifted. It wasn't a joke anymore. Not for her. Not in that message. There was no humor in it. No casual tone. No safety. Just a question. Simple. Direct. Real. I sat up slowly, reading it again. Is your offer still good? No extra words. No explanation. Just that. And somehow, that made it heavier, because it meant she had thought about it. Overnight, alone, decided it was worth asking, which meant it wasn't small. It wasn't random. It mattered. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling slowly. What was I supposed to say? Yes? And change everything? No? And pretend it didn't matter? Or something in between? Something safe. Something that didn't commit. But that didn't feel right. Because this wasn't a situation that worked with half answers. She wasn't asking for a maybe. She was asking for something real. And the truth was, I didn't know what I wanted. Not completely. But I knew one thing. I didn't like the idea of saying no. That was the part I couldn't ignore. Because it meant something. Something I hadn't fully figured out yet. I stared at the message again. Then finally started typing. Stopped. Deleted it. Started again. Because this wasn't just about words. It was about what came after them. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing at the edge of something I couldn't control. Something that would change more than just one moment. Something that would change how I lived, how I thought, how I let people into my life. And that scared me, not because it was bad, but because it was unknown. I took a deep breath, looking at the screen one last time. Then I made a decision, not based on logic, not based on comfort, but on something simpler, something honest. I typed, "Yeah, it is." And as I stared at those words before sending them, I realized this time it wasn't a joke anymore. The message was sent. And just like that, there was no taking it back. Yeah, it is. 3 simple words. But they didn't feel simple anymore. They felt like a decision. I stared at the screen for a few seconds after sending it, half expecting to feel something immediate. Regret, relief, clarity. Instead, there was just silence. The kind that comes right after you do something you can't undo. I set my phone down on the table and leaned back, exhaling slowly. What did I just do? I muttered to myself. Not in a panicked way. More like I was trying to catch up with my own actions. Because the truth was, I hadn't fully thought it through. Not the details, not the consequences, not what it would actually look like. I just knew I didn't want to say no, and somehow that had been enough. My phone buzzed again. I looked at it immediately. Her reply. Okay, that was it. No excitement. No questions. No hesitation. Just okay. And somehow that made it even more real, because it meant she had already decided, too. She wasn't waiting for reassurance. She wasn't testing me. She was ready. I sat there for a moment, letting that sink in. This wasn't hypothetical anymore. This wasn't a conversation. This was happening. I stood up, looking around my apartment for the first time. That day with a different perspective. Before, it had just been a place. A space I used. Now, it was about to be shared. The thought felt unfamiliar. Not uncomfortable. Just new. I walked through the room slowly, noticing things I had ignored for months. The clutter on the table, the chair I never used, the empty corner near the window. It wasn't messy, but it wasn't ready either. Not for someone else. Not for someone who would actually live here. I ran a hand over the back of the couch, thinking, what does ready even look like? I didn't know, because I had never had to think about it before. For years, I had built my life around simplicity, minimal needs, minimal expectations, no one else to consider. It made everything easier, cleaner. But now, that was changing, and I had agreed to it. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. That part mattered. I started cleaning, not in a rushed, forced way, but intentionally, like each small action meant something more than just moving things around. I cleared the table, organized the shelves, moved things to make space, actual space, for another person. It felt strange at first, like I was adjusting my life for something I hadn't fully accepted yet. But as I kept going, that feeling shifted. It stopped feeling like a disruption and started feeling like preparation. By the time I was done, the apartment looked different. Not drastically, but enough. Enough to feel like it could hold more than just me. I stepped back, looking around. This might actually work, I said quietly. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't about the space. It was about us. And that part I couldn't control. The knock came earlier than I expected. Not late, not hesitant, just steady, like she knew exactly what she was doing. I walked to the door, pausing for a second before opening it. Not out of fear, but awareness. This was the moment where everything shifted from idea to reality. I opened the door. She was standing there. One bag, that's it. No extra stuff, no overpacking, no backup plan. Just one bag and the same calm expression she always had, like she had already accepted whatever came next. Hey, she said. Hey, I replied. For a second, we just stood there. Not awkward. Just processing. Then I stepped aside. Come in. She walked in slowly, her eyes moving around the space, taking it in, not judging, not analyzing, just noticing. It's not much, I said. I don't need much, she replied. Simple, honest. She set her bag down near the couch and looked back at me. Thanks, she said. There was something different in her voice this time. Not casual, not distant. Genuine? I nodded. Yeah, no problem. Another pause. But this one felt different. Less uncertain. More settled. So, I said, rubbing the back of my neck slightly, we'll figure things out as we go. She gave a small nod. Yeah, she said. And that was it. No big conversation. No rules. No plan. Just an understanding. The first few hours were quiet. Not uncomfortable. Just new. She moved slowly like she didn't want to disturb anything. I did the same. Like I didn't want to overwhelm her. We stayed in our own spaces even though we were in the same room. But as time passed, that space between us started to shrink. Not physically, naturally. She sat on the couch. I took the chair. We talked. Not about anything serious, just small things. Simple things. The kind of conversation that builds familiarity without forcing it. And for the first time, it didn't feel like I was hosting someone. It felt like I was sharing something. That night, as I got ready to sleep, I realized something. The apartment didn't feel the same. Not because it was louder, not because it was different, but because it wasn't empty anymore. And that changed everything. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not by choice, just aware. There was movement in the other room. Soft, quiet, but present. I sat up listening for a moment, then got up and walked out. She was in the kitchen, making coffee, like it was normal, like she had always been there. She glanced at me briefly. "You're up," she said. "Yeah," I replied. She handed me a cup without asking. I took it. "Thanks." We stood there for a second, drinking coffee in silence, but it didn't feel empty. It felt steady, and that was new. Days passed, then more. The routine started forming on its own. No discussions, no planning, just small adjustments. She took the couch at night. I stayed in my room. We shared meals sometimes. Other times we didn't. It wasn't forced. It wasn't structured. It just worked. And the more it worked, the more I realized something. This wasn't temporary. Not in the way I first thought. It wasn't just about helping her or giving her a place to stay. It was something else, something quieter, something that was building without either of us naming it. One evening we were sitting there again, same couch, same room, but everything felt different, less distant, more real. "Why did you say yes?" she asked suddenly. I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "You didn't have to," she said. "It was just a joke." I thought about it, really thought about it, then answered honestly. "I didn't want you to have nowhere to go," I said. She nodded slowly. "That's it?" I hesitated. "Because it wasn't. Not anymore." "I guess I also didn't mind you being here," I added. She looked at me for a moment, then looked away. But I saw it. That small shift in her expression, that quiet understanding. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't admitted to myself yet. This wasn't just about giving her space. It was about making room for something I didn't expect, something I wasn't sure I was ready for, but wasn't trying to stop either. And as that thought settled in, I knew one thing for sure. This was no longer just her moving in. This was the beginning of something neither of us had planned. The change didn't happen all at once. There was no single moment where everything suddenly became different. It was quieter than that, slower. The kind of change you only notice when you stop and look back. At first we were careful, not distant, just aware. She didn't take up more space than she needed. I didn't ask more than I should. We moved around each other like two people trying not to disturb something fragile. But over time, that careful distance started to fade. Not because we forced it, because we stopped needing it. The apartment began to feel less like mine and more like something shared. Not in an obvious way. There were no big changes, just small ones. Her bag wasn't by the couch anymore. It had a place. The kitchen didn't feel unused. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt lived in, and that was new for me. I had spent so long building a life where nothing depended on anyone else, where I didn't have to adjust, didn't have to think about how my actions affected someone in the same space. It made things easier. But now, I was starting to see what that simplicity had cost me. One evening, I came home later than usual. Work had dragged on longer than I expected, and by the time I reached the door, I was already thinking about the quiet inside, the same quiet I had always come back to. But when I opened the door, it wasn't the same. The lights were on, soft, warm, and she was there, sitting on the couch, reading something, completely at ease like she belonged. Like this was her space too. For a second, I just stood there, watching, taking it in, because something about that moment felt different. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, just right. "You're late," she said without looking up. "Yeah," I replied, stepping inside. "Long day." She nodded, turning a page. No questions, no pressure, just acknowledgement. And for some reason, that meant more than anything else. I set my keys down and sat across from her. The room felt full, not crowded, full. And I realized something I hadn't expected. I liked it, not just tolerated it, not just accepted it, actually liked it. That thought stayed with me longer than it should have, because it meant something. It meant this wasn't temporary anymore. Not in the way I first thought. Days turned into weeks. The rhythm between us became natural, effortless in a way I didn't know relationships could be. We talked more. Not about everything, but enough. About small things, about past moments, about things we usually kept to ourselves. And slowly, the walls we both had started to come down, not completely, but enough to see each other more clearly. One night, we were sitting on the couch again. Same place, different feeling. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yeah," I replied. She hesitated for a second and then asked, "Did you ever think this would happen?" I frowned slightly. "What part?" "This," she said, gesturing around the room. "Us living like this." I leaned back, thinking about it. "No," I said honestly. "Not even close." She nodded slowly. "Me neither." There was a pause. Not awkward, just thoughtful. "Do you regret it?" she asked. The question caught me off guard. Not because it was hard, but because I hadn't even considered it. I looked at her. Really looked this time. At the way she sat comfortably. At how natural everything felt now. At how much had changed without either of us forcing it. "No," I said. Not quickly, not casually, but with certainty. "I don't." She held my gaze for a moment, then nodded once. "Good," she said quietly. After that, the conversation shifted, not in words, in feeling. Something settled between us, something unspoken, but understood. That night, I stayed up longer than usual, not because I couldn't sleep, but because I was thinking about how everything started. A joke, a moment I didn't take seriously, a sentence I almost took back. And now, here we were, living in a reality that came from something I didn't plan, didn't expect, didn't even fully understand at the time. It made me realize something important. Some of the biggest changes in life don't come from decisions you carefully think through. They come from moments you almost ignore, moments where you say something without knowing why, moments that feel small until they aren't. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of movement again. But this time, it felt normal. Expected. I got up and walked into the kitchen. She was there, same as before, making coffee. She glanced at me and gave a small nod. "Morning? Morning?" She handed me a cup again, like it was routine now. I took it, leaning against the counter. We stood there in silence for a moment, but it wasn't empty. It was comfortable, steady, and that's when it fully hit me. This wasn't just something that happened. This was something we were building, without pressure, without forcing it, just by being present, together. I took a sip of the coffee, then looked at her. "Hey," I said. "Yeah?" she replied. I hesitated for a second. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted to say it right. "You planning to leave anytime soon?" She looked at me, really looked. Not confused, not surprised, just understanding. "Why?" she asked. I shrugged slightly. No reason. She held my gaze for a moment longer, then gave a small, almost unnoticeable smile. "Not if you don't want me to," she said. I nodded once. That was enough. No big statement, no dramatic moment, just something simple, real. And as I stood there, in a space that no longer felt empty, with someone who no longer felt temporary, I realized something I hadn't seen before. That joke I made that night was never really a joke. It was the moment everything quietly began.